Hi friends, and welcome to our first virtual class of the day. In this class, we're going to put together the 2-page spread of Live Life in Full Bloom, and I'll also give you a few tips on how to store your color cardstock, as well as to use it in your die cutting machines. So grab your supplies and I'll see you right back here. For this class, you will need your Live Life in Full Bloom page kit, a paper trimmer, a pair of scissors, a ruler, and for this kit, we use these colors of Quick Quotes Powder Puff inks: Aloha, Strawberry Milkshake, Lemon Chiffon, and Coconut. We also used a dauber to get into those tiny little areas. You'll also need various types of adhesive. I like the dry adhesive for our larger pieces, the 3D foam when we want extra dimension, and our trusty liquid adhesive for those tiny pieces. And of course, I can never scrap without my trusty tweezers. Ready to get started? We're going to get started with the left side of the spread. And this is the side that we do 100% in solid color cardstock, so no pattern paper here. But as you know, I love pattern papers. It's probably one of my most favorite things about scrapbooking is picking out pattern papers. And I often will use stripes in my design. I love how stripes give you the opportunity to bring in like a punch of color that's often unexpected. So when we started to design this spread, I was really inspired by these beautiful butterfly stickers that I found. So I thought, if I can't use a striped paper, couldn't find one that matched exactly, why not create it ourselves? So that's what we're going to do. Very first thing with this side of our spread is we're going to custom create our own striped paper. So our 12 by 12 white cardstock will eventually be our background, but for now we're going to set that aside. And from your kit, I want you to pull out our thin piece of teal cardstock. And then in your baggie, you have all of these series of little rectangle pieces of cardstock. So let's go ahead and pull out all of those. This is a great technique to use, especially if you're doing something that's specific colors, like you're scrapbooking for a wedding and you want to do the specific wedding colors, or perhaps you're doing a school themed page and you want specifically to use the school colors, and maybe you can't find those exact colors of paper. So same with this. I couldn't find this exact combination of colors in a striped paper that would coordinate beautifully here with our dimensional butterfly stickers. So with all of these little pieces, we are going to custom create this striped paper. This is going to serve as our base. You really won't see it in the end. We're just going to use it kind of as our guide as we're laying out all of these different puzzle pieces. What was easiest for me was to run my adhesive totally on this piece of teal cardstock. To me, this was easier than putting adhesive on one of these, putting it down, put adhesive on another one, and put it down. Just went a little quicker. And it doesn't matter which order that you go in. I'm going to go ahead and follow exactly as we have it laid out on the sample, but you're welcome to go in any order at all. But what we want to do is we're going to, again, use that teal as our guide, and we are going to lay our rectangular shaped cardstock pieces, just one right after the other. Now I didn't want any gap in between, so when I put the next one down, we're going right flush up against that first one. So we want no teal showing in between. And we're just gonna keep going until we have that whole piece covered. So again, just flush next to each other. And then we'll go on to the next piece. Now for all of these little pieces, The size was really important. We wanted to make sure it was really a perfect cut, because if it was a little off, then by the time we got down to the end, you would see that these started to go at a little bit of a slant if our cuts weren't perfectly straight. So for all of our rectangular pieces, we cut them out on a die cutting machine. That way there was less chance for an error and more chance that it would be the exact cut. But you could do this by alternating the thicknesses, where you could do the 1/2 inch piece and then maybe you do 1/4 inch piece and then go back to the 1/2 inch. We put them all pretty symmetrical here. But again, you know, the sky's the limit when it comes to a technique like this. So we're just gonna keep going here. And again, I'm putting mine exact as they are. All right, one more, and then I'm gonna pause for a second. All right. So you can tell that I'm kind of going in exact order of my sample here. And if you look at that light yellow, the light yellow here is pretty thin. It was just because of how it all worked out in the end. So what you can do is you can just keep layering your pieces, and as you go down, and then we'll go back to this exact size. So anything that would hang off the edge, we're gonna cut off. Or you could go ahead and go back down to the base here and then work your way up, filling in the gap there. Either way, it doesn't really matter. The whole thing is, in the end, we want to make sure that the front is totally covered, and then we'll go back and we'll snip any excess that hangs off the edge there. You'll notice that we did include some of the teal pieces, which is the exact same color as our background. Now, the way that I have put my adhesive, we do need to use those teals, because if not, we would see the adhesive in that blank spot. But if you were adhering these one by one by one, you could just leave a little bit of a gap instead of using the teal if you wanted just to use that background that it's showing. But again, it's just trying to make it as easy as possible here. And I'm just going to keep layering. You'll notice for all of these pieces, we use the canvas collection so that they all have the same texture. But again, wouldn't be a necessity. Would be quite cool if you wanted to do this exact same thing and then have it alternate, where you're using the canvas, the glimmer, the embossed dot, the smooth. All right, so there we go. It's our very own striped paper. And again, the sky's the limit. This way you could make it absolutely any colors that you need to match your page. So if you have a certain colored shirt that you're wearing, or maybe your Christmas colors are non-traditional, or maybe you celebrate Hanukkah and you can't find the exact colors that match your theme for your page, this way you can custom create it to be anything that you want it to be. All right, the key with this is, see how this little bit gold edge here hangs off the edge. We want to go back so that we are the exact same size as this teal piece of paper. So I'm just going to use my scissors and I'm going to snip off just this little bit so that we are back to the exact same length. So we want to make sure, again, that this teal is our guide here, and we want to cut it so that it's still that exact same length. All right, it's not totally done yet, because if you look at our final page here, see how we have some striped paper showing here, and we have some striped paper showing here, and obviously it's only this thick. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this into 2 pieces. So for this, I think it's easier to use the paper trimmer. And what we're going to do here is we are going to cut our striped piece of paper, and we're gonna cut off a 3/4 of an inch piece. 3/4. And you are going through a lot of layers here. So it will take a little bit of muscle strength, but we want a 3/4 of an inch strip here, and this one that we have left is, I believe, about a 2¼ inch piece. So that way we have our 2 separate pieces. Now make sure that you have put your adhesive solid and none of these little pieces are coming up here. That should be totally all stuck down. Now say you were doing an entire album, again, maybe it's a wedding album, so you wanted this color scheme to go throughout your entire book. So you could create this exact same technique on a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, and then you could cut it off as you need it. So for this page, you needed the 3/4 of an inch strip, and maybe you're gonna use an inch strip or 1/2 inch strip on the page beside it. And then you can keep using that, and you're getting a lot of bang for your buck if you go ahead and create this exact same technique on a large 12 by 12 scale. Alrighty, but now we are ready to go ahead and start adhering. So we're gonna set that little piece aside. We're gonna bring in our white cardstock here, and then we're gonna go ahead and adhere our thicker piece of striped paper. We're gonna adhere that on the right side. It's not all the way to the edge. We're gonna leave just a little bit of a border showing there, so that we have just a tiny bit of the white showing all the way around. All right, so for our next strip here, we have this piece of bright pink cardstock. So if you notice here, we have created kind of a different effect of a pattern paper where we're doing a kind of a tone-on-tone monochromatic effect here. So in your bag, you have that hexagon overlay that's light pink. We're gonna go ahead and pull that out of our bag here. Caught on a butterfly. All right, then also in your bag, we're gonna go ahead and pull out just a few of the hexagons. So you should have some that are solid. And of course, this was the negative space from our overlay. Always remember to use your negative space as well. It's not always possible, but in something like this, it's pretty easy to go ahead and add to your page. All right, so I want you to go ahead and adhere your light pink hexagon overlay to your bright pink. Now, this is where your creative imagination comes in here, because you can do this however you want. You could cut this up and put it in various patterns along there. You could put it diagonal. Again, you could cut it up and maybe put it horizontal instead of vertical. You know, you could start putting pieces like this, cut it off and put the other piece down here. This part is totally up to you. I'm gonna go the most simplistic route here. And go ahead and just kind of adhere that in the center of that pink paper. All right, and now we're gonna fill in just some of the gaps here. So just ever so randomly, we're gonna put these in. And again, this is where your imagination kind of comes in. You could use 3D foam and put some in the centers so that you have that extra layer of dimension. You could put them here, you know, wherever you want to put them. We are gonna use a few extras outside of that pink confinement there. So leave a few, but outside of that, you are welcome to put them wherever you'd like. The only thing that we need to remember is that eventually we will be adding photos, And most likely part of our photos are going to go on top of this. So if we're adding in the 3D, just remember that and maybe try to avoid the center so that we're able to put our photos in some of that space. All right, I'm just going to have just some fun here, just adding some random hexagons. Okay, and then I might add just a few more at the top as well. These are pretty large pieces when it comes to die cut, so you wouldn't necessarily have to use a wet adhesive like I am. I just find that a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. All right, and then I'm just going to stop there for now because I can always come back and add more later. All right, so now again, we've kind of created that monochromatic tone-on-tone effect. Kind of similar to like if you have the Bow Bunny double dot, how they do the tone-on-tone with that pattern paper. So it's kind of mimicking that sort of pattern paper. Now, something we haven't done really in scrapbooking in a while is I'm going to go ahead and tear this edge. Again, you can leave it straight edged. I just like the difference in texture that it creates when we do this torn edge. And I'm going to go through all of these layers here. Now, the trick, I think, is when you are tearing to make sure you're tearing it towards you, because when you tear towards you, see how we get that beautiful feather edge there? Again, to me, it just creates another kind of added layer of texture and dimension. You will notice when you get to our really thin overlay that it does become a little more difficult to tear going through the couple layers, but we should easily be able to get through that. Now, you will notice that mine tore pretty smoothly, and maybe you're thinking, well, mine didn't tear near that smoothly. It was really kind of challenging for me to tear that paper. And it's all about the grain of the paper. Now, my Colors Cardstock is known for its really long pulp fibers here. It's a virgin pulp, so that there's nothing synthetic in it. And because of that, it's easier to tear that paper and you'll have that solid color all the way through. There's not the white edge. But it also depends on your grain. So once we are completed with this page, I'm going to show you how to find the grain of your paper and why that's important. But for now, let's go ahead and get these pieces down. And what we're going to do is we don't want to see any white showing. So we're going to adhere that piece just enough to overlap the stripe so that there isn't any white showing in between this piece and our stripe. And then we're also going to tuck our stripe underneath that edge there, so that when all is said and done, our piece is going to kind of look like this. So I'm going to use this as my guide. I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to run adhesive on our thin strip of our custom striped paper. Now, we want to give the illusion that this striped paper goes all the way across underneath this piece. So make sure that your colors align and that whatever is the top here is the top here as well. And I'm just going to hold this down and I'm going to just tuck that under. I only want to see about a ½ inch or so. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add our monochromatic paper that we've created here. And I'm going to add that in between these two layers. All right. Isn't that beautiful? I just love how with no pattern paper at all, we've created such a beautiful pattern here. All right, for the next step here, we are going to work on our butterflies. And we are going to kind of custom create yet another kind of pattern paper effect with our butterflies. So let's go ahead and pull out that butterfly die cut there. And then there should be a stray little butterfly there as well. All right, so for this, we will need our Powder Puff inks. So if you're not an inker, it's okay. You can just use this just like this, and we're gonna have a tone-on-tone effect. But I really love how we've kind of brought in a watercolor with our chalking inks. So I'm gonna start with our lemon chiffon. So lemon chiffon obviously is a really, really pale yellow. So we want to make sure it's a light color. We want this whole page to kind of be more soft. So we went with a softer kind of yellow. So when you ink, I want you to ink the entire half of the butterfly. So if you look, I've inked the entire half of the butterfly, and we're just going to keep doing that. Now I primarily I'm going down the right side, but you are welcome to do it however you want. I did want still to see some of the white, so I didn't want to totally cover it. But if you look, how I just made sure that we still saw some white, but I really wanted to go in pretty heavy. So I'm going way more than just the edge. I'm going at about half of the butterfly's body on every single butterfly. Every single butterfly. And again, I'm going down the right side, but you can mix and match or whatever you feel like doing with yours. All right, so if you see here, we should have kind of a two-tone here where we have part of it, the butterfly is still white, and then part of the butterfly is the yellow. Now don't forget about our one little stray. We have our one little stray, and we're gonna go ahead and ink that with our lemon chiffon as well. All right. So we can leave it just like that, which is really quite a beautiful effect as well, but I wanted to take it up one step further. So I'm gonna pull out my strawberry milkshake, and then I'm gonna go along the edge of the same side where I've inked the yellow. And I'm, again, this time just doing the edge. I'm not going in near as far as I did with my yellow. And I'm gonna go again along every petal here. And I'm gonna go all the way down. Now my strawberry milkshake I have had for quite a while, so it's pretty dry. It still obviously is doing its job and is still putting that beautiful pink color on, but it's a little bit softer because I've had it for a while. Don't forget about our little baby here. Now, if your strawberry milkshake is brand new, it's a pretty bold shade of pink. So that's where the coconut came in. So if you find that your pink shades are just way too bright, I always have a coconut that I save just for my pink. My favorite color that Quick Quotes had was Pink Cheeks. And the great news is they've recently brought it back. So we will have Pink Cheeks back in stock again. Woo! But they have substituted it for a while with the strawberry milkshake, which is quite a bit brighter. So when you add the coconut on top of the strawberry milkshake, you get pink cheeks. So we kind of found a way to work it around. But say if your pink is way too bright, if you go over all of that surface with our coconut, it will kind of blend those two colors together. So it will tone down our pink, but it will also blend the yellow and the pink together to really give this beautiful shading effect. See if you can see the difference with our little one here. This is what the color looked like without the white. So if you see kind of the stark shades there of the pink, and then how when we went over it with the coconut, how it really softened and really made it look more like a watercolor by just kind of going and blending with our coconut. Now don't forget, obviously my coconut has turned a really pale shade of pink because I used it to go over our strawberry milkshake. So you always want to have two. You want one coconut that you're going to leave white, and then you're going to have one coconut that you always use for this effect. But you could see the difference here. Just, just look and admire your work here. How beautiful it looked, how we went just from plain white cardstock, and then within minutes, we have just taken our shades of Quick Quotes inks to really create what appears to be the butterflies cut out of a pattern paper. Now I'm just going to lay these here for now because this is really all dependent on how you want to do your photo mats. So we've given you a full sheet of the teal so that you can cut your photo mats so that they fit your photos specifically. I'm going to go ahead and cut my photo mats here, doing the exact same size as the sample. So we have the one for our 4x6, and then we have the one for our 3x5. But by having the full sheet, that way you can make them fit your specific photos. So once I kind of get this laid out, I do want to make sure that we see some of those butterflies. So I am going to put one photo mat so that it's tucked underneath. So once I kind of have where I want it to go, I'm going to go ahead and adhere our larger one and then the smaller one. Now, if you don't know exactly what your photo mats are going to be, obviously we're just going to hold off adhering that butterfly, this butterfly piece here. Or what you could do is just put a couple drops of adhesive down here and leave all of these loose. That way you have the flexibility of slipping underneath wherever it works for your photos. But again, I just want to make sure we see that kind of beautiful handiwork there. We're going to go about like so. Now, it's really enough here with these two photos that this is going to stay down, especially once we get our title down in this corner. But I'm just going to put just a couple drops of glue just to make sure that this doesn't go anywhere. Get our glue unclogged. All right, there we go. And then I'm going to add just a little bit up here. Our page protector is really going to make sure that that stays in place so we don't need to get the entire surface covered. For this little guy here, I did want to use the 3D foam. I love the dimension. So I'm going to flip him over And I'm gonna add just a little tiny bit of the 3D foam. That's why I like the big rolls. That way I can cut it exactly to the size I need it. We did recently add the foam rolls to our website. We have a couple different options, depending on how much you like to pop. We have a really big roll like the one that I use, but then we also have the smaller Tim Holtz version as well. All right, I'm just gonna give him a little highlighted spot up there in the corner. All right, so let's go ahead now and we can put our title piece together. So in our bag, we're gonna go ahead and pull out all of the pieces for our title. All right, some of these letters are individual, not all attached. So just make sure that we're pulling out all of our little pieces there. All right, now we can get started. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and adhere kind of the obvious piece first, because we know exactly by the shape where that's going to go. And then we'll fill in with our darker teal piece. If you'll notice how precise the cuts are, using the canvas collection there on our die cutting machines. Once we finish this page, we'll tell you a few little tricks on the storage, on the die cutting, and then again, how to find the grain of your cardstock. All right, for the rest of our title, I'm gonna go ahead and lay it out to make sure that I have it all spaced appropriately here. This is always the time-consuming part. It's putting together our titles with all of these little individual letters. I always tell all of you to really kind of start pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, to try things new and different. Even if you don't think you like them, you never know. So I always try to make sure that I'm kind of living by that guideline as well, because you've heard me say pink is a very difficult color for me. I guess it's because I have 3 boys, so I've always found it very difficult to scrap in pink. So I have been pushing myself out of my comfort zone and use pink in my scrapbooking. All right, so we're gonna move this over just a little, and then we're gonna start adhering. All right, I think that's gonna work there. All right, and you kind of know my little trick to this. When there's such tiny little pieces, I make myself a little puddle of our liquid adhesive. And then I ever so gently dip each letter into that little puddle. That way I don't have to pick up my glue bottle with every single letter. It's just a little bit of a time saving, I think. And then if anything ever oozes kind of out the side, I make sure I clean it up right then, right before it dries. That way we don't have that little halo of adhesive showing outside of our letters. I know several of you still use the Xyron machines, and that works fine with these little letters too. There's something with me and the Xyron that just never quite clicked. So hopefully you have found a technique that works easy enough for you when it comes to these little teeny letters. All right, just a couple more here. And our last E. All right, so now we have our live life. And then we can go ahead and finish out our title here. So again, if you look at the intricacy of these tiny little letters, and think of mass production here when we've done hundreds and hundreds of these kits, and how nice and clean and crisp those cuts are with this canvas collection. The thing about using this technique where we have the little puddle of adhesive is the adhesive can dry pretty quickly. So you'll want to make sure that you're working pretty quick if you use this technique. And you want to start out with just a little amount because obviously we can't get that back in the bottle. So we don't want to waste. You can always add more. You can't stick it back in. All right, perfect. I'm gonna set that to the side there, and then I'm gonna go ahead and adhere that. For me, I'm adhering it down in that lower left corner. It is just gonna matter where you're gonna put your photos. Alrighty. So now we have our pop of black. So we have our big Monarch butterflies here. And we're gonna go ahead and put those together. Now I didn't do any inking with these. I just adhered these layers together just simply just as they are. I'm a huge butterfly fan. They're just kind of a symbol of rebirth and beauty. When my husband and I were married, I owned a beautiful historical farmhouse out on a couple of acres with just a gorgeous pergola. And we were married outside under the pergola with all of our family and friends around. And once our good friend and a local judge pronounced us man and wife, everyone in the crowd had a little box. And in that box was a beautiful monarch butterfly. And when he said, introduced Mr. and Mrs. Kurtmeyer, everyone opened their boxes and out flew about 100 monarch butterflies. It was really a sight to behold. So every time I see this page, that's always what it makes me think of, that beautiful July day. All right, so again, we didn't do any inking. There's not really a lot that you see, but if you notice, we've kind of mimicked the same effect here, where we've just used the tone on tone, where we just kind of want the ombre effect, exactly how we've done these here. But I really wanted to bring in that pop of black, really to add kind of a punch to this page. So I'm going to run my adhesive on the back of each of these. And then all we'll have to do is finish up with our butterfly stickers. And we're going to go ahead and toss in a few more of our hexagon shapes. All right, so I'm going to add a few more hexagons over here to the side, maybe one there at the top. Again, this is kind of where your creative liberty comes in. I'm going to toss one up there. And then I'm going to toss in some to the side, wherever it looks good to you. Add shape in there. You would be welcome to use the 3D foam on these as well. I'm just going to go ahead and leave them flat, as I'm going to add some butterfly stickers on top of some of them, so that way we weren't too lumpy with our pages. And I think I'm just going to do one more here. Just like so. All right, so I'm not going to use those extras. You will notice there's another little butterfly in there too that we didn't use. Again, it's your page. Feel free to embellish however you'd like. I'm going to pull out the stickers, which was the whole inspiration for the color scheme for this page. And we are just going to kind of fill in some of the space with these gorgeous stickers. And I'm going to put one more over here. And then just to add just a little bit more dimension and texture, we have some hot pink brads. And we're just going to pop them in a little bit random here. Again, it's going to depend on where your photo mats are. I'm using my good old trusty tweezers to poke my holes. Obviously, be careful not to get your fingers poked underneath. Then we're going to open up those little legs on the back. Let's see if we can get all three of these stuck in, and then I'm going to flip it over. Let's see if that works. All right, perfect. And there we go, we did it. How you doing? We're gonna have just a few more minutes to finish up this page while I give you some additional tips and tricks, and then we'll come back here and we'll finish out the spread. The best way to store your cardstock is in an airtight container. To help reduce the amount of humidity and moisture, be sure to slip in a Silicone Gel Pack into the container with your paper. You know, those little packets that typically arrive in your box of new shoes. The purpose of those little packets is to absorb any moisture that may seep in and in turn keep your cardstock dry. Dry cardstock will cut much easier in your die cutting machines. In the office, we have a digital thermostat that will also tell us the percentage of humidity in the air. If the percentage gets above 60, we know there's going to be some cutting issues. So the more moisture you can remove from the paper before cutting, the better. The Silicone Gel Packs are good for about 2 months. After 2 months, you'll want to reactivate them. To do this, lay the gel packs in a single layer on a cookie sheet. Bake at 275 degrees from 30 to 90 minutes, depending on how large your silica gel packs are and how many you are drying out. After they've cooled, they are ready to go back into your airtight container. Silica gel packs are great to have around the house. If you have important documents, slip in a silica gel pack. Maybe your important jewelry, slip in a silica gel pack. Also, if you're one that likes to dry flowers, the silica gel pack's a great way to do that quickly. Another thing that's important to think about with your paper, other than the amount of humidity in the air and in the paper, is the grain. We want to cut our paper and fold our paper going along the grain. So if during that first page in our spread, maybe your paper was a little more difficult to tear, it's probably because you were tearing against the grain. Now, it depends on how we cut it as well, but you always want to see the grain if you're going to tear or fold your paper. And to do that, you simply just have to lift up the paper. So if you notice here, see how our paper is naturally kind of folding over when I pick up that piece of paper. This is the grain of the paper. If I flip it and then hold the paper this way, see how it's trying really hard not to fold. It's trying its best to kind of stay straight. That's going against the grain. So again, when you're folding it, it's important to know so that you can fold with the grain, you can tear it with the grain. It's also important though, if you like to journal on the computer. So say you cut down your paper to 8.5 by 11 and you want to run it through your printer to print your typewritten journaling. If you run it through your printer with the grain, it will go through that printer roller smoothly because it will be bendable and flexible and go through the printer. So if you find that your paper is constantly getting jammed, chances are it's because you have it going into the printer against the grain. So again, just a quick, easy way to figure out the grain direction of your paper. Let's finish up this first spread by completing our right page. Let's get started on our second page. Now we are going to cheat a little on this one as we're going to use some pattern papers, but you can tell that our base, again, we're starting with a solid color canvas collection of my Colors Cardstock. You'll find also that you have a lot of extra paper when it comes to putting together this side. So this is all just kind of bonus paper that you can use to create an additional page that would also coordinate with this spread. But in your pack, you have 4 sheets of 12 by 12 paper. And with those 12 sheets, we are going to cut 10 2.5-inch squares. So 10 2.5-inch squares. And you can mix and match this however you'd like. We have actually the 4 patterns here, but if you flip it over, we also have the other side for our patterns as well. You could cut them all from the exact same pattern. You could just use a couple. So again, this is your page. Feel free to be as creative as you'd like, but we need a total of 10 2.5-inch squares. I'm gonna set those down and then I'm gonna go ahead and get started here on my cuts with the 2.5 by 2.5 squares. You can see how easy it would be to custom create a paper like this as well, using the yellow canvas collection as your background and cutting out some polka dots to custom create your own polka dot paper. So just because you can't find that perfect pattern paper to coordinate with your photos, now you know how to custom to create that yourself. So continuing here with my 2.5 inch squares. Almost finished, just a couple more to go. And those cupcakes, adorable. If you were making this as a birthday page, it would be exceptionally cute. All right, I need just 2 more here. All right, so again, we need a total of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. And that's the only thing we use all this pattern paper for. So all of this is just extra that you can use on future projects. So we'll set that aside. Now, if you look at my final sample here, we kind of have that roughed up white edge of each of those squares. Now that was, to me, we just added a little more visual interest, but that's totally personal preference. If you want to do that, just take a sanding block and go around the edge of each of those. If you're really, really careful too, you could do something like take your Tim Holtz scissors that are really, really sharp and kind of just flake the edges gently. If you don't have a sanding block, you could go around each edge of the paper just like so, just to kind of give that just kind of a little bit of a roughed edge. You don't have to have some fancy sanding block either, so go out to the garage, and if you have a piece of sandpaper out there, it works just as well, just the same. So again, if you would want to go ahead and do that, you'd be welcome to. And then we're going to adhere them to the page after you have done that. So we have a total of 10. We have the first row, we need to add about 3. And I am just going to lay them out for spacing, and then I'm going to go through and adhere them. I always like to make sure it's all going to fit nice and neat and look aesthetically pleasing. And then I'll go back through and glue them all. All right, so I know I'm gonna have to push this up a little bit. And this, again, is gonna depend on how you do your photos. So if your photos are gonna be a little different than mine, then you're gonna want to rearrange your squares accordingly. But now that I have them somewhat in their right location, I'm gonna go ahead and start adhering all of our squares down. Now I'm leaving about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch or so of that left margin here. And then we're gonna put them pretty tight. There's probably maybe just more than 1/4 of an inch in between. There we go, and then one last one to make up that first column. All right, now that I have that first column down, I can see where the rest are gonna go. And again, it's gonna depend on exactly how your photos are going to work. So I'm gonna lay mine out like this because I have that big horizontal photo, as you see here, that's gonna cover up a lot of that emptiness there. So I didn't wanna waste the pattern paper, but obviously you have plenty that if it's easier for you for now, you can go ahead and cut 2 additional and go ahead and fill in that gap. That way at a later time when you come back and add your photos, you have all sorts of options and not any kind of gap showing anywhere. So we'll just go ahead and finish adhering our squares. And again, now that you've seen kind of the easy way there that it is to custom create your own pattern paper, when you look at these patterns, just let your imagination go with that. So think of like recreating that plaid paper. It'd be really similar to how we designed our striped paper, but they used a white background, added the cardstock strips at a diagonal, and then leaving some of that white showing. So we could make our own plaid paper in absolutely any colors that work. How fun would that be, especially if you are a flannel wearing family? You could make the pattern exactly match your flannels. Does anybody do matching flannel Christmas PJs? All right, one last one here. All right. Now I did want to leave this open so that it gave us a little more room to make sure that we saw our title. But again, as I said earlier, you're welcome to go ahead and add 2 more there if you don't know where your photos are going to go. That way you have a lot more options once you go to add the photos. Now remember from our first page, we used that hexagon shape. So we're going to bring that same shape over to our other side here, just so that our 2 pages really look like they coordinate and like they go together. So I'm just going to very randomly here add some of our hexagon shapes onto our background sheet. And this is just to create some kind of tone on tone, so that we're adding kind of a little bit of pattern to our page by adding this geometrical shape, but we're really not making anything kind of busy. Since this is where our title is going to go on this side, we still kind of want that solid surface to work with so that it's easy to read our title. But as you get this layered on, see how it just gives it just a little bit of extra texture and dimension there by adding that tone on tone. If I can slip this one underneath, I'm gonna try tucking this one underneath that edge there. Perfect. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep adding some. I try to make sure that their angles are all still going in the same direction. So I'm putting them so that everything is kind of parallel here. So they're not exactly random. Random in their location, but not in their direction, so that they're all kind of facing in the same way. All right, and then I'm going to add just a few at the top here. Maybe if we start around here. And then I'll save a few so that once I get all of my pieces adhered, if I see that there's kind of an awkward space that might need some gaps filled in, we'll still have a few that we can do that. You might still have a few left over from your first page. Let's see if we can tuck this one just underneath there. Perfect. Maybe one more and then I'll save the rest. Let's see, maybe we'll put that one right there. All right, see, and then again, how we have just that tone on tone that's gonna just barely give us the hint of a pattern there. All right, so for the photo mats, we gave you the full 12 by 12 sheet. You probably still even have some of the teal left over from the front page. I went ahead and cut my photo mats to match a 4 by 6 photo, as well as a 3.5 by 5 photo. So this is totally going to depend on what your photos are. All right, now for the fun part. Now we have all of our die cuts here. So let's start with our title of Collect Beautiful Moments. We'll start with those pieces and then kind of layer in with all of the rest. So the only one that has the 2 layers is our word moments. So we're going to go ahead and add the 2 layers together for the moments. All right, and again, stop here just for a moment, just to think about, like, if you see these 2 colors together, you don't necessarily think that they scream like they coordinate, right? It's a kind of a little bit of an awkward shade of gold with an awkward shade of a teal. But again, because we custom created that striped paper on our first page, you'll see in the end when these both go side by side, how beautifully it all goes together. And it's started because we custom created a striped paper to coordinate our sticker embellishments, our butterflies there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, using the sample as my guide, go ahead and adhere our title. I really love how that white stands out against that pink background. For all of these so far, I'm just putting them flush to the page. You would be more than welcome to use 3D pop dots if you would prefer. And then I want my pop of black. All right, and then don't forget my kind of rule of thumb when it comes to titles. I say this often, but in case you haven't caught or in case you need a refresher course, I always say how to really make your pages stand out and make them a little more visually interesting is if you have a title on your page and there's 3 or more words in that title, we always want to change the color, the size, or the font of at least one of the words. And just by doing that, it will really create this beautiful visual interest. So see how we've done all of the above, where we've changed the color and the font. And just that really easy little subtle change, how that really makes that more professional and really more pleasing to the eye. All right, now all the rest is pretty easy here. We're going to go ahead and adhere together the rest of our embellishments. Our die cuts, sorry. See if I can pull out all of our tiny pieces. All right. And believe it or not, this is a piece as well. Some of those get so tiny, don't they? All right, I am going to start with our blue rose. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the green layer to our black shadow. Oops. Again, I just wanted that little pop of black. You know, they always say that every female should have a little black dress because it's appropriate for everything. Well, to me, I like that little pop of black in almost every one of my pages. It just is like the staple color for me. I like how it really sets a defined line, even with the pastels. When it came to our fun little rose here, I did ink that. If you wanted to ink, I inked that in Aloha. And also, if you wanted, since we have those score lines from our die cutting machine as your guide, you could actually go over that with one of your blue Nuvo glitter markers and really give that some fun shimmery highlights if you wanted to add that little touch there. Maybe like the Arctic Blast or the Athenian Blue would be pretty to add some accents to your rose. Would also be fun to take maybe your peppermint and go down this the stem of the rose, maybe add some shimmer to some of the petals. You could really add a lot of fun highlights to these die cuts. But since we had so much going into that first page, I thought I would take it easy on you and make it simple for this second page here. All right. And it's kind of hard to see in our final part here, but I do have some white die cuts, some white leaves, this fern leaf as well, just again to kind of ground that, to give us this kind of a solid base to really make sure that our title stood out against the various pattern papers there. So it's going to depend on exactly how you have yours all arranged. And again, you could use the 3D pop dots. If you don't have your photo mats already ready, I would be pretty lenient there with your adhesive in case you needed to slip a photo underneath an edge at some point. So anytime that would overlap the photo mats, I'm just keeping it open. That way I can slip photos underneath later. All right, we also have our white fern that's gonna accent the base of our title there. I'm just gonna go down the stem and add that just underneath our title. All right, and then we have our two butterflies. So we're mimicking the Monarch Butterfly from our left page. When we were teaching this class in person, I had someone who added a layer of shimmer to each of her Monarch butterflies, and I believe I have a photo, so take a look there on the screen. Isn't that gorgeous how she added the shimmer to the black butterfly, and what a difference that made. So incredibly pretty. I love when someone takes one of my ideas and totally twists it and turns it or adds or embellishes it. I love to see individuality in scrapbooking and people really twisting things to make it totally their own. Maybe I love that because I love to do that myself as well. I've always told my boys to be you. Don't let anybody tell you who you are. Don't let them tell you how to wear your hair. Just be who you are in your own creative being. All right, couple more pieces here to finish up our final die cut, and we can layer it all together. One last piece. All right, now this butterfly here, I just put him up in the corner, just flush to the back of the page. For our Monarch Butterfly, I did use the 3D foam to adhere that. So for him, I'm going to add some of our 3D foam back here. I'm going to go ahead and use these squares just to make it a little easier. We have quite a big surface to work with, so these are going to work out just fine for this. Get to some of these tiny ones. I always like to totally load up my surface. That way it's popped off the page and still is one flat surface there. All right, and I'm just going to pull off the bigger ones. All right. Perfect, it's coming together. See how quick and easy this one is? So last but not least, we have our brads and our butterfly stickers. Now there's more butterfly stickers than you'll need. But again, the whole purpose was there so you have some extra. You can create an additional page or two with all of these extra supplies from this kit. I'd love to see what you come up with, by the way. I absolutely love that. Once you finish a page and you put photos on it, I love to see it. It looks so dramatically different and really comes to life once we see those photos pop onto that page. So never hesitate. It's an enjoyment for me. It's never a bother to get your emails. It is truly an enjoyment when I see your photos pop up. I have to laugh. I'm sure you can't. Well, you can't see him. My little doggy decided to join us and hopped up right behind me on the chair. All right, so now that we have that all down, I think I'm going to add one more hexagon up there just to help fill in that space. And then all I'll have left to do is add our brads. All right, so I believe you should have 5 brads. I'm just gonna go ahead and poke my holes. That way I can just go ahead and add them one by one here. And the purpose of these is, again, just to add another little visual interest. I like to add various layers of depth, and that just helps to create just one more fun little visual interest in our page. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my bagging and get our final 3. All right. I have the dog behind me scratching my back so that I'll turn around and give him some attention. He is just sorely mistreated, let me tell you. He's a little diva. All right, we're gonna open these up. And there we go. We did it. We completed our very first spread of the day. So for the next class, we're going to take a little bit of a break from page kits, and we're going to work on these uber fun Christmas tags. If you didn't purchase them in advance, go to your computer right now and purchase them so that you'll have them in time for your Christmas presents. I'll see you back here in a few.